Our next speaker is Cheryl Go, Vice President of Marketing at Grab. Until last week, many of you outside of Asia may not have heard of Grab before. They are the platform which acquired the entire Uber business in Southeast Asia. But some of you may have picked up since that they agreed the largest ever merger with a special purpose acquisition company that values Grab at $40 billion. In her role, Cheryl shapes the strategy behind the company's astonishing growth. User growth, geographic expansion, and service diversification. In her own words, she left a cushy corporate job to join the company when no one had actually heard of it. She's here today to discuss Grab's journey from a startup to a multi-billion-dollar unicorn, an amazing story of purpose-driven growth across Southeast Asia, and a story that led her to feature on the global shortlist of nominees for the WTA Global Market of the Year award last year. Please join me in welcoming Cheryl Go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I run marketing and social impact at Grab, and I joined the company, back in 2013. And back then, we weren't even called Grab. We were called My Taxi, and we only did one thing, which we were a taxi hailing app, and we were based in only one country, which was Malaysia. This is what the office looked like when I joined. I think as what Stefan said in the introduction, I kind of left a corporate job to join this. And it was a small room. We were actually operating out of a storeroom of another organization. And so when you look at it, we came from really humble beginnings. Lots of our furniture were hand-me-downs, nothing really matched. And so this was like our humble beginnings. So anyway, back in 2013, if you told me that one day, My Taxi would scale into a super app, one that will allow you to do, you can choose many different transportation options. You can do food delivery. You can send parcels to people, to your friends. You can buy insurance. You can do wealth management, pay online. I don't know whether I would have believed you, to be honest. But, here we are today. Today, we are the #1 super app across Southeast Asia. And what that means is we provide many different services for our consumers, all in just one single app that operates in all the different markets that we operate in. We are in over 400 cities in 8 countries. We have over 25 million monthly transacting users. We are the largest online transportation platform, serving billions of rides to date. We are the #1 fintech platform, especially when it comes to digital wallet. And we have been given a digital banking license in Singapore. And we are the fastest growing, and we are the #1 online food delivery service. And we've managed to somehow achieve this all in 9 years. Many years ago when we were, talking to investors about Southeast Asia, actually many people didn't even know where it was, right? But today, I think given the excitement, lots of things have changed, and we are extremely proud to be representing Southeast Asia, and hopefully we'll do a good job at it. So really lots have changed since the early days of My Taxi. But for us, what hasn't changed is that we have always been focused on Southeast Asia. We have always been committed in solving its biggest problems. And we really believe that technology can be a driving force for good. Now, Southeast Asia, it's a really exciting time now. People finally know where it is, what it is. We are at this point of real great transformation. Growing faster than even China. And some people call Southeast Asia it's like China 5 years ago. Or some people might say, it's an emerging market. For us, for Grab, we call Southeast Asia home. And at home, we have a really youthful population. The median age of the population is under 30. And, very young. At the same time, a lot of internet users, very high internet connectivity, more than 35 million internet users, larger than the population size of the US. And every month since 2015, more than 3 million Southeast Asians go online for the first time. So on top of that, very large population, 375 million people live in this region. And our digital economy is expected to triple in size and reach 270 billion over the next 7 years. So it's a land of, it's a region of incredible potential, but also at the same time, it also has a lot of challenges, right? Here in Southeast Asia, there's still a lot of inequality, whether it's social, whether it's income, or whether it's access to basic services. In fact, 36 million people today in Southeast Asia still live under the poverty line, which is $2 a day, right? Yet, with all that poverty, in some countries, the top richest 1% control more than 50% of all wealth in the country. I think a lot of services, things like healthcare, are taken for granted. In Southeast Asia, for every 1,000 people, you have one doctor, which is quite low. And at the same time, millions of people remain unbanked. Only 27% of Southeast Asians have access to a bank account. And despite the progress that we've had, there remains a huge digital divide. And internet penetration in countries like Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore is still low, and many people do not have access to internet at all, right? So I think, we believe that in Southeast Asia, we believe it's a land of immense potential, but also one of lots of challenges. And this is where we want to really make a difference. And we want to give access to everyday entrepreneurs. So, I think, what do I mean by that? Today, more than 9 million micro entrepreneurs earn some sort of living through the Grab platform. This could be someone who is transporting goods and services. Maybe it's food deliveries or sending a parcel. This could be drivers offering you a ride on a motorbike, on a car. And it's also agents offering access to digital services, right? And before Grab, 21% of our drivers did not have any work. And in fact, 31% of our agents didn't have income before joining our agent network. So I really believe that technology can create wealth at the bottom of the pyramid. And we're seeing that in great scale across our platform today. But I think what's more important than creating opportunities at scale is creating opportunities that are inclusive and accessible to all. But the sad truth is, if you're older, if you're disabled, sometimes it's harder to get access to such opportunities. And this is where a company like ours can make a difference.
I would say they have zero awareness when it comes to all.
There be like a barrier.
Anything happens, macam mana? Dia tak dengar.
Yeah, they shouldn't be on the road.
很危险，其实。Saya tak nak ambil risiko.
I know there are many people out there with negative thoughts about deaf drivers. Maybe they don't have the trust that we can actually drive safely. But they need to know that we're actually good drivers. We may have lost one of our senses, but we still have our eyesight. When I'm driving, I'm always concentrating on the road, and I'm very much aware of my surroundings. One of the reasons that I joined Grab is because I want to prove to the hearing people that I can be on my own. I can actually get by on my own. I can be independent. I know I can't change the negative opinions overnight, but I hope they'll understand that we, the OKUs, including the deaf, are just like other human beings.
2020 was a really difficult year for Southeast Asia, and I think the world as well, right? It was the year in which, Grab's business was put in the spotlight for many reasons. It was the year that 14 million Southeast Asians lost their jobs, and platforms like Grab became a source of employment. It was a year where restaurants lost a lot of their dine-in traffic, and many, many small businesses closed down. So during this year, we became a very important source of hundreds of thousands of new delivery partners. We onboarded 600,000 small businesses regionally, whether they're hawkers, wet markets, farmers, businesses that have never ever come online before. And we launched various campaigns to drive business to those new businesses so that to help them keep afloat. So I think it was a year in which, we could really see the impact that Grab can have on economies, but also at the same time, I think the pandemic exposed the vulnerability of gig workers who don't have income or medical protection. And I think this is why a couple of weeks ago, we decided to launch the Grab for Good Fund. It is an endowment fund, which once it matures beyond a certain point, will continue to self-perpetuate and will be evergreen, right? So we launch a fund, and that fund will do a number of things, such as support education and scholarships for our drivers and their children. We'll use it to substitute insurance programs so that you can purchase insurance for life and critical illness. We'll also use it to increase financial and digital literacy. And some of the funds will also be used for climate change resiliency. So, but I think while we wait for the fund to mature, we've also decided to do a couple of things immediately. One of which is very important to us, we've decided to look at vaccinating our drivers across Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, the vaccination program isn't standard, meaning in some countries, government will provide for it, but in other countries, there's no end in sight. And so what we are going to do is obtain vaccines for drivers not covered as part of a national program. And we plan to vaccinate all our drivers and delivery partners by the end of 2020. And the fund will be a very important part for this, right? So I think a few things that I wanted to share about our experience of how we kind of do social impact at scale. The first thing that we kind of learned in this process is that we have to be extremely hyper-local. It might seem a bit counterintuitive, but Southeast Asia, it's very fragmented. There's no one size fits all. Cambodia is not like Malaysia, it's not like Singapore, it's not like Vietnam. And so I think when we are looking for solutions, they don't always, like one solution doesn't work for every country. Maybe as an example, when COVID first started, in Singapore, the people who were most severely hit were our passenger drivers because people weren't going out. And so to keep them afloat, we transitioned them to do deliveries for food, which we saw a spike in, right? We also, after transitioning them, we also looked at other things such as commissions, rental rebates, so that they can continue to earn a decent income. And over time, I think as the industry shrunk, we looked at ways in which we can even help them transition out of gig work by partnering with people like Microsoft. This is in Singapore, right, where I think COVID is very under control. But in other markets, say, for example, in countries like Myanmar and Philippines, what really people needed was just food, because sometimes it was just a complete lockdown. And so this is where the only thing that we could do was actually give out rice. We gave more than half a ton of rice out in some markets to help our drivers stay afloat. I think also when we think about hyper-local solutions, something like a driver, a person in a wheelchair is able to do food delivery in Singapore because of very good infrastructure, but that's not possible in many other markets. So I think when designing solutions for us, one of the things that we learn is that it's important to be extremely hyper-local. The other thing that we learn is just, I think we really need to partner if we want to deliver anything at scale. We don't need many partners. We just need some really good ones. Southeast Asia is very complex. It's very complicated, and we're not the best at everything. So together, we work with some partners to help us deliver the most impact. We work very closely with Microsoft as well as Generation, a global NGO. And some of the programs that we've launched with them have been really, really life-changing. One of them is a digital literacy proficiency among all our driver partners. If you look at this image, actually a driver tagged me on Twitter. He went through all the courses, he really enjoyed it. And it's not just him. He was very proud of it, it's sort of like helped him grow. More than 500 driver and delivery partners have participated till the point that they have a cert from us or Microsoft. And this is available in 5 countries. We also ran a pilot, which was a boot camp that we did with Microsoft and Generation to try and see whether it's possible to train driver partners to become tech talent. And we're really excited to welcome Farhan. Farhan will be joining Grab as a full-time employee in May to do software engineering. So, I think we hope to roll this out in more markets. So I think partnering is really important for us. And the other thing that we learn is just, sometimes you expect as a company, you have to do everything. But the reality is, as a platform, you can also empower your community to do good, right? And so if in our case, what we were able to do is when COVID hit, 15,000 of our delivery partners, driver partners, they decided to volunteer medical workers to work under the Grab Care program. A lot of consumers realized this is a hard time for the gig economy. So, we saw a huge increase in the number of tips from customers. And we also saw, in frequency and both in amount. And consumers also decided, to donate more than 700,000 meals to our delivery partners. And I think, we saw a lot of restaurants come on board with no real advertising. So one of the things that we did was, how about we take 100 aspiring creators, people who want to make content, train them under Nas Academy. Messiah is one of the top, you guys might know him as Nas Daily. He's one of the top internet influencers. So we ran a program with him to train people to create content. And some of these content creators from nothing, they now have millions of views. And as part of what they do, they also promote, new merchants on the Grab platform. And we just launched this today, something that we can get community involved. We launched a program where people can participate to minimize their carbon footprint, which is, you can opt that every time you take a ride, you can opt to offset that carbon and plant a tree by a Vera certified tree planter. So I think I'll end with this video and then I'll take some questions. Hang on, let me just play it.
Saya sedar dilahirkan hidup sebegini takkan mudah. Selepas itu, saya berkahwin dengan seorang lelaki, keadaannya juga macam saya. Kami tidak mengharapkan belas kasihan. Kami inginkan kebebasan. Jadi, bila kami mendapat peluang untuk jadi kami berusaha keras membeli sebuah kereta dan bekerja siang ke malam bentuk kehidupan di mana saya boleh menjadi diri saya sendiri. Sekarang, saya gunakan kekurangan saya ini sebagai peluang untuk menghantar orang ramai. Itu adalah sesi pembelajaran saya. Saya rasa kelemahan saya adalah kelebihan saya.
Yeah, what's amazing about the City story is that she couldn't drive before she joined Grab. She saw an ad and she felt inspired to become a driver, and she decided that she will do it. She then had to get her driving license before she could become a driver. And if you look at this photo, The man next to her is a husband. Beyond driving for Grab, they also operate a business where they help other people with disabilities modify their cars so that you can drive on the road and be independent. And so sometimes when people ask, that tells me the answer is definitely yes. And it starts when companies don't aim to be the most profitable, but we aim to deliver the most impact while being profitable. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Cheryl, for sharing this wonderful story. We have a few minutes left for a question and answer session. So I'd like to invite the audience to share their sessions in the Q&A widget. But while they do that, I'd like to start the conversation specifically on the last point you raised in your presentation. You were saying, no, this tension of profit and purpose, that isn't really there in Grab. You feel that you get that balance right. Can you explain to us how you deal with those situations where, indeed, doing the right thing, being truthful to what you want to be as a company, and accepting the impact on profit? How do you make those decisions? How do you make those calls?
Yeah, so I think a very common term people always use is sort of like purpose-driven marketing. I think it's important to be a purpose-driven business, right? And so it is ingrained in the things that you do. I guess for Grab, no matter what we do, we will always provide income opportunities for people at mass. I think for us, no matter what, we have decided to take the step to provide on-job insurance for every single one of our drivers, even though it costs us a lot. And then the rest is really about balancing surviving and also doing good, right? And I think when it is part of the company that you are, it becomes a lot more intuitive because you kind of know that you won't survive unless you do some of these things. At the same time, you have to balance it with being a business, right? So I think I find sort of like purpose-driven marketing a bit of a hard term. I think purpose-driven business is something that I understand a lot better. And I really think, it is absolutely possible. It is harder. I think reduce the costs, right, of advertising, for example. And, many things that we do in life, this being one of them, there will always be a tension, but it doesn't mean that it can't be done, especially if it becomes part of your brand, part of your company.
Cheryl, in your presentation of Grab, you explain actually, although Southeast Asia is a region, how actually very different the countries are in the level of development, but also in their cultures and their language, etc. How do you manage to be such a hyper-local company while having to operate on relatively scarce resources? How do you do that?
We are hyper-local. Honestly, if you compare us to like a global company or one that operates a bit more centrally, we are built very different. And it has always been a big part of Grab and the way that we have scaled and grown. And yes, to some degree, sometimes it feels like there is overlapping of resources. We are overextending because every country we have a team and all of that. But I think this has been very important for our success. I think people always ask, how is it that you're able to expand into all these different countries and into all these different new business verticals, yet still do well? And a lot of it is because we have a team that makes sure that the problem that we are solving is the right problem, the solution is relevant, and it can be different based on the way it is. So I think for us, we went down the path of being hyper-local. That is how we are set up in terms of cost structure, in terms of just the way we think and operate. And that's just kind of how we've decided to operate as a company. Some people, the other spectrum of that is a typical MNC where, the same ad is doubled in multiple languages. We swap out the actresses and all of that. I think we are at really the other end of that, of being hyperlocal, and that's just kind of how that's our strategy, and that's ingrained in the organization.
Cheryl, question to your role as the Chief Marketing Officer of Grab. Now, you joined the company very early on, but the sort of strategic decisions which Grab has taken over all these years, you've played an important role in that. No, and it's interesting that it contrasts with some of the conversations. Can you talk to us in terms of what the CMO's role is in Grab?
Yep. So I guess I'm also very lucky, to be honest, because I started, right in the early days, and I could help shape my own role. But fundamentally, two things: I drive growth, and I take care of the brand's reputation, the financials, the unit economics of what makes the business tick. I need to understand the levers that I have, not in marketing, but as a business, and how I can use marketing to exploit or take advantage of those levers, right? So I think, to have a seat at the table, you really need to be a business person. You really need to understand financials, because I think that will really drive the right marketing sort of outcomes. I also, am the voice of the customer. You need to really know who are you building products for, who are you marketing to, how do you want to segment them, all the technology, but also the market research that goes behind that. And I think when it comes to reputation, which is why I also take care of, like a lot of other things outside of traditional scope of marketing, is I believe that reputation isn't something that you blast on a billboard. It is through everybody's interaction with you as a company, with your app. So I think it's it can't be, you can't change people's perception and reputation in your reputation through advertising. You need to do it in the product. You need to do it in your actions. So yeah, I think that's how marketing is kind of structured in Grab, and I won't lie, I would say I'm really fortunate to be able to build this role around what I think how marketers can really contribute, and so I'm really thankful for the opportunity.
One of the key subjects yesterday in our day 2 of the conference was sustainability. So we heard a lot about the importance of actually embracing sustainability, etc. And you mentioned that also in the presentation of Grab. Where does sustainability sit actually in the organization? Is there a sustainability officer? And how do you work with people who are in charge of sustainability in the company?
So it sits under me today, and there are different parts. I would say there are 2 big parts of our business where we have 3 big parts that we need to look at. Right, one is obviously our business itself, the facilities that we run. Whether should we be buying racks? How do we make energy more efficient in the offices that we're in? And then there's the transportation business, which I work very closely with the transportation leaders on how do we think about what EV will be like in 5 to 10 years. How can we get our fleet ready for that? How are we thinking about offsetting carbon in the absence of maybe the right regulations to drive EV forward? And of course, there's the food delivery business, which does generate a lot of plastic waste that we're also trying to think of how to minimize, right? So I think I work with all the different business leads to try and drive that from the top. How can we think about sustainability? We also then have, like company-wide plans on how can we get to sort of like, minimize emission. How can we look at technology to reduce, sort of like wait time on the road, distance travel? How can we look at batching, carpooling, and various other things? So, yeah, I think the short answer to that is it sits under me. I work with all the other business leads. I think we are just beginning on this as well.
Cheryl, I'd like to end with a question coming from the audience, which is really central also to our conference this year, and that's around diversity and inclusion. And the question is: any insights and advice regarding being heard and driving change as a female marketer and as a woman of color?
Grab has been one of the best places for me to work. I think I've never felt my gender, my color, my race impact anything that I do in Grab. And we're very lucky as an organization to be like that. I think that is driven by the fact that our CEO, which is Anthony, was raised by a very strong woman. He really, understands diversity and inclusion. When it comes to the top, it's a lot easier at Grab. We also, at the same time, have other things like we have dashboards so that we can make sure there's no gender pay gap. We make sure that there's no difference in promotion ratios. We look at like the makeup of our team in terms of diversity. I think personally, though, before Grab, it hasn't always been the easiest journey. And I guess for me, it is a difficult one, right? Especially if you're not in a position of power. When you are, I would say this. I guess from my experience of someone that has been in a situation which wasn't pleasant, in the end, you have only 2 choices. You should speak your mind, but if the organization doesn't do anything about it, you have to do two things. You have to be best in class. You need to be an amazing person, an amazing talent. And with all of that, then you have the option to go somewhere else that will appreciate you for all your gifts and your talent, and not look at it as a, it's a lot of negative point. It's a plus point. So yeah, I've been blessed, but I guess for you, and I've gone through this before, just make sure you are absolutely amazing in the field of work that you're in, so you have the option to go somewhere else and be appreciated like you deserve.
Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, Cheryl. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now go for a short break. So if you could please go to your schedule and click on the link for the...